it's really products by swimrunners for swimrunners, and we iterate a lot on every product we make. We're not rushing anything.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris. And on this week's show, we have a really special guest. We have Christofer Sundberg, who's the co-founder of Ark Sports, on the show. So we're going to have a great conversation about him. It's less about gear, more about his journey in the sport and the growth of a brand, which we think is really interesting and perfect leading up to a race week.
Yes, we're all excited. Ötillö Catalina is this week, and they have just announced there's over 500 racers, making it the biggest swimrun event ever in the United States, which...
And a bunch of international representation, right?
A lot of...
I already forgot what the email said.
I forgot what it said too, but I just know there's going to be a lot of people there from 18 different countries. That sounds like reasonable. We are also, the Low Tide Boyz are going to be hosting or co-hosting some sort of happy hour either on Saturday after the race around 3 potentially, or sometime on Sunday after the race. So stay tuned to both our Instagram and our Facebook, the Low Tide Boyz with a Z, for those details.
Great. So we have a couple shout outs we want to make this week. These are folks that have sent us content to share to all of our fans, which has been really helpful, I think. So we have this _Trista, or this is Trista, who gave us a really great pro tip on, she heard the show about Beak's paddle breaking at Swimrun, North Carolina. And she was like, oh, this is what I do, and sent us a photo of it. And I asked her if we could share it, and it was like super smart. So just basically taking some extra cable and putting it in some of the extra holes so you have it just in case. Yeah,
pretty smart. And we also wanted to give dual pool buoy shout-outs to the West Coast Swimrun for the behind-the-back mounting option, as well as Swimrun Labs. They each did pretty much the same thing, but the Swimrun Labs has a little bit more control and variant to it, and the other one's just clean and simple. And I have actually... I did that to Chris's keel, his Ark keel buoy. I took it one day and I DIY'd it and used it, and I fell in love.
Yeah, and I was in no way upset that you did that. I'm glad. And honestly, I think, Ötillö has mentioned this, and we just keep hearing it, and it makes sense. Sometimes, like, the simplest thing is the best.
Yes.
And we've definitely found, as we keep, iterating with our pool buoys, we're not obsessed. Promise we're not. It seems to be the simplest.
We find ourselves resorting back to what's simpler. Less is more is kind of what we're finding out. And again, I think we really appreciate everyone sending content and tagging us in your workouts or your gear DIYs, all that stuff. Because admittedly, we're not experts. We're not at the pointy end. We're just your average Joes, right? And we don't know everything about swimrun. But that's why we like to have the community to share, and we can kind of reshare and amplify that with everyone else and see what everyone else is doing. And I know every time someone tags us in something, I'm looking at it, I'm like, ooh, I like the way that they did that. I might want to try that out with my buoy or my paddles or whatever. So we just, again, really, really appreciate that stuff. How was our training as we go into race week?
Well,
Chris?
by the time this episode airs, we'll be shitting our pants
with nerves.
So I mean, I actually feel pretty good about it. I think, given the fact had a pretty busy travel schedule the last couple months. All of our children were sick for an extended period of time.
Yes.
I'm pretty happy with the build we have. Pretty confident in the swim and the run. I think
we got a lot of open water swimming.
Yeah, really excited. Plenty of open water swimming. We're just really excited to go out there and race some bison.
Yeah, there's gonna be bison there. Crazy. And I'm just excited for the adventure. I know it's gonna be crazy. And Beak and Blake also had this great course preview video. So if you're looking for some last minute training, check that out on YouTube. Just YouTube Ötillö Catalina course preview. And Beak and Blake did a walkthrough video of all the different hills and climbs and stuff. The course is absolutely stunning looking. The water is crystal clear, big wide trails. You don't have to worry about rolling your ankle on a root or something. But.
Yeah, and just for the record, this podcast is not sponsored by the Catalina Tourist Bureau
or the Catalina Wine Mixer.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that kind of sums up this week. But we're really looking forward to everyone's thoughts on the Ark interview, and I think it was a really great story. And to hear Christofer's kind of journey on how he got into Swimrun is not too much unlike maybe most people.
Right.
And that's why I think it's so...
Exactly. It's kind of like what he did with it. And I think through the interview, you just can't help but root for Ark Sports. Like you just want them to crush. And I mean, I think
totally.
There's a lot of brands that we like, but if you find yourself rooting against Ark Sports, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah,
they're just great guys trying to do it right, trying to iterate the right way. I'm a fan.
Yeah. So enjoy the interview, and we'll see you in Catalina.
Yep. All right. Well, with us today, we have Christofer Sundberg, swimrunner from Sweden and the co-founder of Ark Sports. He worked in the video game space since '92 and started his own company, Avalanche Studios, in 2003. Additionally, he co-founded Ark Sports with Dennis Blomberg and Daniel Sand in 2017. Ark Sports is one of the leaders in the swimrun space, innovating and creating some of the best apparel for swimrun, including swim buoys, our favorite topic that we've seen. Welcome to the show, Chris. We're really excited to have you on the show. This is the first time we've had a wetsuit brand or a swimrun sports brand on the show. We've only had coaches and athletes, so we're really excited to have you on. And we start every show kind of asking how did you come across swimrun? So we'd love to hear that story and what that experience was like.
Swimrun to me has been I'm not a sports person, but when I discovered swimrun, it just became the only sports that I've ever been interested in. And I started running when I got divorced in 2010, just to clear my head. And then Dennis Blomberg, he got divorced around the same time. And he talked about this weird sport where you were swimming and running from island to island in the Stockholm archipelago, and it sounded super weird. And I had a drowning accident when I was 4. I fell between 2 boats in the late evening, and if it wouldn't have been for a light that just flashed through, so my mom could dive in and grab me by my hair.
Wow!
I would have drowned. So that made me quite scared of water, and I went through like 7 swimming schools without learning how to swim. I didn't even want to get my head under the water. So I first got my head under the water voluntarily when I was 13, and that's when I learned how just to swim, like breaststrokes, barely. So I've always had a huge respect for water, and it's been sort of my nemesis. And when I came across swimrun, I just found it so fascinating. So I signed up for a race without knowing how to swim, which perhaps wasn't the brightest idea.
Interesting.
And this was in 2013, and this was Amfibiemannen in Stockholm archipelago. And when I realized that I wouldn't be able to pull it off, I contacted a swimming coach named Ulf Hausman in Stockholm, and we met up. And this was in late 2013, and he just asked me to swim in a 25-meter pool, and just said, like, do your best. And I thought it was pretty good. And I could just see him standing there beside the pool and shaking his head. It's like, and he said, that we had a lot to work on. And so that's how I discovered Swimrun. And then I did my first Swimrun in 2014, the race I signed up for. And it was so much fun. I had a blast, and it just became, for me, it's the perfect form of exercise. So that's sort of the long, short story.
Yeah, I mean, we're super into the sense of adventure and how much adventure that you have. Did you do it solo, or you had a partner, or did you do that one with Dennis, or?
No, I did it with a partner guy that I worked with at Avalanche.
Nice.
And he it was his first swim run as well. Nice. It was his second swim run. But after we did that swim run, I was in a great running shape that race, so I kept like a 4:30 pace throughout the race, and he was just dragging behind me like like a little puppet. And so once we finished the race, he said it was his second race and his last, and he's never gone back to it since.
You broke him in between, almost literally not being able to swim and founding or co-founding Ark Sports was a relatively, we're talking only a few years. I mean, walk us through a little bit about sort of the origin story of Ark and how that came to be in such a short amount of time.
It goes back to when I started Avalanche. I've always been a gamer, game player, game developer. I did my first game, or programmed my first game when I was 11. So it was a hobby that then became a profession, and then I started my own company within video games in 2003, and the same way with Ark. It's since swimrun has become such a big passion for me. It was a hobby that then I could turn into a profession, and the stars were kind of aligning because Dennis and Daniel, who worked at Head at the time, they were planning on leaving. They worked for the Head's Swedish agent called the CBM or something, and they were planning on leaving, and we started getting our heads together and in 2017 at some point, and it's like, why aren't there any swimrun equipment being developed in Sweden where the sport was invented, and together with the athletes actually using the equipment?
Yeah.
So we started. I had an opportunity to invest in the company, and so we set up a company, and then we developed a prototype for the Ötillö suit, and then we Daniel Hansson and Jesper Svensson on the Ötillö World Championships, as well as Christine and Annika. They trusted us in racing the World Championships with wearing our suits, or a prototype of it. Daniel and Jesper broke the world record, and Christine and Annika won as well. So we couldn't have had a better launch of the brand.
Overnight, you became the world's fastest,
and that's really good. Yeah. So we that's where at the point where I felt I could invest some more money to the company, as we could not have had a better launch of the brand, and that the suits actually worked. So I invested some more, and we became a company all of a sudden.
Awesome. Yeah, and you can tell just by your product catalog that it is made by swim runners for swim runners. I mean, there's so many little nuances and everything as you're looking through the catalog about things that just make sense for swim runners, like the kangaroo vest and the removable arm warmers and stuff. I mean, that's things that in our view, traditional, maybe a triathlon wetsuit company or whatever is not thinking of, because they haven't been racing swim run for many years and at the upper levels of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you say, that it's really products by swim runners for swim runners, and we iterate a lot on every product we make. We're not rushing anything. And all the suits, they're handmade. So it's, and that's both good and bad, because it can come with some defects. But as every product in the early stages, we've gone through that phase, and we know what works and what doesn't work. So it's been a really, really interesting journey, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I mean, that we definitely think you guys are. So where is the manufacturing taking place? Is it in Sweden?
The suits are designed in Sweden but manufactured in China, and we use a neoprene that's made by a Japanese company called Yamamoto, and they are the only manufacturer that I know of that makes limestone-based neoprene, which is more eco-friendly than the traditional petroleum-based.
Well, you're totally teeing it up for me, because I actually wanted to ask you about the efforts that Ark is, you put it on your website about being sort of taking, quote, the eco lead. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so traditionally neoprene has been manufactured with, it's been petroleum-based. And as we all know, that's not the most environmentally friendly. But
yeah.
Then we have looked into different materials, and limestone-based neoprene is, I mean, it's eco-friendly, but it's still a material that needs to be manufactured by mining limestone with big machines. So we're not at a stage where we would call our suits like eco-friendly. They are eco-friendlier than, but we're constantly looking into new materials. And right now there's only one material that works for swimrun, since it's the suits needs to. They need to stand the challenge of swimrun, where you crawl up rocks, you run through shrubbery, and we all have seen the after a race, and they're not a pretty sight sometimes. So, but we're constantly evaluating new materials and looking into different ways to choose a more eco-friendly material and development process. We try to ship our suits not by plane.
Oh.
And so on, and we're just making efforts. And our pull buoy pontoon is made by recycled plastic, and that's that product is manufactured in Sweden, as well as our hand paddles. They're also made in Sweden, so we can cut the transportation route.
Yeah,
quite a lot.
Nice. That's really awesome. So, and you're one of the title sponsors of Ötillö and all their races. We'd love to hear a little bit about how that partnership happened. I mean, it seemed like a match made in heaven sort of thing, about the swimrun first wetsuit company with the heavy hitter swimrun race company in the world. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the swimrun community is quite small. We Ötillö, the World Series, was sponsored by Head Swimming as their wetsuit partner for many years, and an opportunity came where they were renegotiating their contract. And I mean, for us, it just makes so much sense. We're a Swedish company. We pretty much live next door to the race organizers. So. And there are our friends. So we decided to sign up for a 3-year partnership with the Ötillö series, and it's worked really, really well for us. And I think it's for us it's been a great marketing effort, but also it's I think it's strengthening the swimrun community that we are so tightly working together in this partnership.
Definitely. I'm assuming Head Sports probably isn't a big fan of Daniel and Dennis
anymore.
No.
So that's great. I know that you guys are going to be at Catalina. Since Ötillö is coming to the U.S., pretty much everybody that we know who's heard of Swimrun is going to be at Catalina. And you guys are going to have a wetsuit rental program. Is that correct?
Yeah. We offer that at every Ötillö race. And it's worked really well. We rent out suits, and then if someone wants to buy it, they can buy it to a discount. It's just worked really well, and I think it's a great way to get more people into the sport, because as most sports, I mean, equipment is expensive.
Yeah.
And before you invest like $400 or $500 into a wetsuit, they don't even know if you're going to continue. I mean, people that start with Swimrun, either you get the Swimrun bus, or you just like, screw this, never do it again.
Yeah, we got the bug, as you can tell.
So by offering this rental service, we can partly, which
you're like reducing the barrier to entry for getting in. And just for our listeners here, €55, which is about $60 US, is what it will cost to rent. And you just go on arkswimrun.com, and there's a tab there that just says rent, and you can select your race, Catalina, what days you want it for and what size. And I assume it'll be there on Friday or Saturday for you.
Yeah, we'll be at Catalina from Friday.
Perfect.
We're just in the process of working out all the logistics, but it's been really popular, the rental program for Catalina, and we've rented out more suits than any race. So awesome. It's great.
That's great. And one of our goals here is, Swimrun is relatively new in the U.S. A lot of people have no idea, and like us, Chris and I, we are recovering triathletes who started. We have young families, and we just don't have time to go on the 6-hour bike ride on Saturdays anymore. So going on a run and then a swim is perfect, and we get to scratch that sense of adventure. So it's why we really hit it off with the sport. But I'm really curious to hear about you and Ark's take on this first U.S. Ötillö Catalina race, and what kind of the future of Swimrun looks like in the U.S.
So we're really excited that Ötillö has managed to organize a race in the United States, and we work together in growing the sport, and as you say, it's a really small sport, and we always have to explain what it is, and it's like, there's no bike, like, no, it's just swimming and running.
That's like the best part.
Yeah. So for us, it's great, because we obviously want to break into the US and explore the world's biggest market for endurance sports. Hopefully convert those hundreds of thousands of triathletes to start Swimrun.
Yeah, we want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's great. Now, sort of the second question of that, where do you see, sort of witness the birth and growth of Swimrun from its origin in Sweden? Do you perceive a similar type of growth in the U.S., or do you think it's going to be a little bit harder to sort of break into this market?
I think it will be a bit longer journey than it was to break into the Swedish market, but I think if we focus our efforts and just don't rush, I think we can break into the US on the US market just within this year. So we're not focusing on the whole continent. we're trying to focus on the locations where there are swim runs in the US. So and that's why, well, one of the reasons why I wanted to have a chat with the guys from Odyssey Swimrun.
So with that, are you guys thinking that you'll have some U.S. distribution at some
point?
Yes,
absolutely. We'll share some more news about that closer to Catalina, but definitely our goal is obviously to sell directly to US athletes. So I'm not 100% sure that we will have a distributor, but we will definitely have a stronger US presence in 2020 than we've had in 2019.
That's great. We love your pool buoys. We think they're beautiful. I can't wait to actually hold one in Catalina. Going back to sort of the goals for Ark, so we talked a little bit about what you want to do in the US, but if we can sort of take a step back, what do you see the goals for the company, overall? Like, what types of products do you want to develop? Like, what does that look like? And where do you see the company, let's say, 3 to 5 years from now?
I want to make Ark the most creative company in sports. And our focus right now has been swimrun, but that's just because we love the sport, and that's where our background is from. But I don't want to stop there. Definitely, triathlon is a huge market that we want to break into, and also OCR. We've sponsored a number of athletes that do the World's Toughest Mudder World Series.
Nice.
And they crawl under barbed wire and carry logs and tires and
yeah, it's pretty wild
stuff. And the suits Charlie Bower is a guy that he's done more miles in the World's Toughest Mudder Series than anyone else. And he's on his second suit, so it holds up really well for the challenge of OCR. So that's definitely a market that we're looking at. And then adventure racing, obviously kayaking and so on, but also lifestyle products. We've seen that, and it's so, you get so humble when you see it. But Ark has really become a brand that a lot of people wants to be associated with, and you can have an athlete racing in another brand suit, and then when they're done with the race, they'll come to us and buy an Ark cap or a T-shirt. So and that it makes me so happy every time I see it, and it's very common. And suits are so individual, since everyone's body is shaped differently, but. So, but it's great that people want to be associated with it, with the brand, and be sort of in the little cool clique around Ark.
So let me ask you a question about that. So why do you think that is? Do you think I love your branding. I think from a marketing and branding perspective, you guys are knocking it out of the park. But do you think it's that, or do you think it's something else? Is it sort of the ethos of the company? Like, I'm just really curious, like, in your view, what do you think is causing people to gravitate towards Ark and have sort of brand loyalty that you want as a sporting goods company?
I think it's one part is that we have always had the quite personal touch to everything. We're always, you can always reach us over on the races where we're just there for everyone for us to talk to. We're not trying to be like business guys when we meet with our athletes. We're just really happy that so many trust us racing in our gear, and I think that personal touch has really helped the brand becoming more popular. But then I think it's a really cool brand to be to be wearing. It's like it's like any other cool clothing brand, sports brand, but it's I think because when I choose my suits, when I started with Swimrun, I just picked the one that the world champions wore, because I got into my head that I would be as good as they are just by wearing the suit. But I think a lot of athletes choose the suits that the elite wears.
Guilty. I'm guilty of that. Yeah, I mean, as Chris mentioned, it's just such a great look. Everyone seems pretty down to earth and very. You have the top of the sport developing and working for your company as well as the athletes. I think it's a combination of all those things there. Yeah, so I mean, everyone, like Chris mentioned, everyone that we know is going to be at Catalina. Will Ark have their full suite of products and apparel there in a big booth if people want to get the blade or a couple pontoons for themselves? Will everything be down there, or
we in the ideal scenario, yes, but we will. We're working on it, how we can ship in the products in the US, and see if we're not getting taxed to death. But that's definitely our goal, to have the full range of gear on site in Catalina.
Well, feel free to ship them to my house.
Absolutely.
So with that, Christofer, we really want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us about Ark. I'm really excited to meet you guys in Catalina. I encourage everyone who's listening to go to arkswimrun.com and see their products, hear about their story, learn about the co-founders, and definitely take advantage of the rental program. If you want to do the race and don't know what to do about a suit, you can't go wrong. So thanks again for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review on iTunes if you're so inclined.
You can also sign up for a newsletter at lowtideboyz.com. That's boys with a Z. And check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boyz on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, drop us an email at lowtideboyz@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun activities, hobbies, and other bullshit we do.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
And then a run.
And then another swim.
Then another run.
And then another swim.
And then run to the finish line. And just keep going until you're done.
Yes, or
until
run
you cross the finish line.
Or run to the car.
Or run to your car.
Somewhere. Just keep running.
Peace.
Only happening.